I remember at that time when I was like really young, one of my neighbor was killed by the military and I saw his body completely mutilated by the bullets.
Pakistan has been kidnapping and forcibly disappearing people for raising any concerns with the oppression of the Baloch people and calling them terrorists.
Members of the Balochistan organization were imprisoned. Some of them are still missing. Most of them were killed and some of them managed to escape from Balochistan basically.
It's the poorest province in Pakistan, with around 70% of the population below the poverty line. Hello and welcome to Decolonial Dispatch, your fortnightly update on global affairs, where we highlight the stories of struggle and liberation that are often ignored. A certain colonial power started this problem back in the 19th century. I'll let you guess who. In her struggle against Russia, this colonial power drew arbitrary lines on the map, just as it has done in many other instances. The Goldsmith Line in 1871 and the Durand Line in 1893 cut through the Baloch homeland, dividing a unified people and their territory between what would become Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan. Ever since then, they've been engaged in an anti-colonial struggle you may or may not have heard of. I'm Mohammad, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about the struggle for Balochistan within the context of Pakistani occupation. Where is that struggle now? How does it navigate the risk of being co-opted by the great powers of the region and world? And later, we'll be joined by Yusuf Baluch, an organizer with Schools Strike for Climate, who's organized with the regional chapter for Fridays for Future Balochistan. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and share this episode. This podcast is brought to you by the Decolonial Center, where we believe education is a tool for liberation. Before we jump in, were you able to guess which empire is largely responsible for Baloch suffering today? You guessed correctly. It's the British. How did you know? When the British came, they took over the traditional homeland of Baloch, the Khanate of Kalat. To do this, they used a system of divide and rule. The Khanate brought together many Balochi tribes in a kind of confederation. And for the British to rule, they had to break this up. They did this by systematically exploiting and exacerbating internal tensions between the central authority of the Khan of Kalat and the powerful tribal chieftains known as Sardars. This policy was formalized through the Sandeman system, named after Agent Robert Sandeman. The system of indirect rule involved providing subsidies and recognition to the Sardars in exchange for their loyalty, and that propped them up as a counterweight to the Khan and then undermined a unified Baloch resistance to British rule. Through the Sandeman system, the British were able to get the Khanate to give up their power. And then, when the British took control, about 1/4 of the territory had been granted to Persia in 1871 and a small strip given to Afghanistan in 1891. The same techniques were used by Pakistan after their independence. For a very short period of time, there was even a Balochistan Republic with its own parliament. But Pakistan used the same system as the British to pressure the leader of the Khanate to forcefully join the new Pakistani Republic. The Balochi people have their own distinct cultural and political identity, and they sit on one of the most resource-rich places in the world. It covers about 43% of Pakistan's territory, and the area's untapped mineral wealth is estimated between $8 trillion and $50 trillion. Key minerals include copper, gold, lithium, and antimony, essential for batteries. At the same time, it's the poorest province in Pakistan, with around 70% of the population below the poverty line. Investment is coming in, but it's not benefiting the people who live there. Chinese investments of nearly $60 billion have targeted this resource-rich province under the banner of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor since 2014. And this has meant that the partnership between Chinese mining capitalists and the ruling elite of Pakistan has been the target of the secular nationalist resistance of the Balochi people. Balochistan alone has witnessed 6 major rebellions since 1947 against the Pakistani state. This includes a non-violent political struggle, but some have also termed to armed struggle, which as of late has targeted Chinese interests in the region. And now the United States is entering into the fray. To compete and even provoke China's Belt and Road Initiative, the Pakistani military-led government has hired Trump's former bodyguard, Keith Schiller, and another Trump-linked lobbying firm for $450,000 a month to get Trump to agree to a security for minerals deal. With the deal, the US would get exclusive access to Pakistan's resources in Balochistan in return for joint counter-terrorism support. Pakistan also said it would nominate Mr. Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize for preventing a nuclear war between Pakistan and India, even though India said Washington played no role in a ceasefire whatsoever. And this has worked. About a few weeks ago, the US designated the Balochistan Liberation Army as a quote-unquote foreign terrorist organization, an indication that Pakistan has now free rein to engage in what it calls counter-terrorism in Balochistan. Pakistan uses this term very broadly. Particularly since the early 2000s, Pakistan has been kidnapping and forcibly disappearing people for raising any concerns with the oppression of the Baloch people and calling them terrorists. It has also adopted a kill and dump policy, a strategy of enforced disappearances followed by a phone call to relatives to receive the mutilated corpses of their loved ones. To persecute Baloch activists, Pakistan also forcibly disappears relatives within a policy of collective punishment. First perfected on Balochis, this strategy has now expanded to other dissidents in Pakistan, including followers of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Amnesty International reported that since the 6th of August 2025, 14 million Balochis have been deprived of access to mobile internet services. At any one time, no more than 3 or 4 people within Balochistan are allowed to be in the same place, otherwise they breach the law. This has been to prevent a movement calling for the end of enforced disappearances. To quote Amnesty International has repeatedly called on the Pakistani authorities to refrain from online censorship and internet shutdowns, which restrict movement and the flow of timely information, particularly during protests in Balochistan. To understand this and more, we're joined by Yusuf Baluch, a Balochi climate activist. Thanks for joining us. So, thank you for taking your time to come and talk to us at the Decolonial Center. I think a lot of us might not know much about what's going on in Balochistan, and I think many of our audience are in the UK, and they probably want to know what the relationship is between Britain and historically and Balochistan.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. First of all, I just wanted to clarify that Baloch is mostly the language that we speak in Balochistan, and Baloch is the people. So just wanted to clarify before we go further. Yes, I think also like you gave a very well explained introduction of what's happening in Balochistan and how it was divided and ruled by the British, but also in order to maintain their power in our region, they made sure that it's still colonized and oppressed by them, so they can benefit from the suffering of our people. And I think you also mentioned about different projects, whether it's Chinese government, Chinese institution, Canadian corporations, many European governments, as well as I think Saudi Arabian government and other Gulf countries were taking interest in Balochistan resources because they want to have access to Central Asia, more specifically because of Gwadar port, because of CPEC, but also to make their trade system easier, to benefit basically from the suffering of our people. And I think you also mentioned about this like complete media black hole. This means that no media is basically allowed to enter in Balochistan. So most of the time, whatever happening on the ground, we don't know what's happening unless we get information from the people who are suffering or being impacted firsthand by these corporations, by these institutions or military occupation and stuff.
And could you maybe give us a little bit about your journey on how you developed or understood your own identity as Baloch and how you got involved in activism?
Yeah, I think growing up mostly, I was a little kid, I think 5-6 years old, I don't remember. But I do remember that there was a flood in our hometown. I used to live in a very small village in Balochistan, in southern Balochistan, like near Iranian border. And because of that flood, entire village were displaced and we had to relocate in a different place until the flood is completely gone and dried, and we came back and we found out the place that we were basically living, it's completely washed away by the flood. At that time I didn't know like what is climate, and there is a concept, especially in some global south countries or like mostly in different parts of the world, that these are natural disasters, but also it's also fed on our mind that these are natural disasters. So these are not like man-made, especially you're a child and you don't know what's happening, so you just just take it as a natural disasters. Yeah, at that time I couldn't understand it that much, but after I moved to a city when I was like really young. My parents were still at the village. I used to live with my cousins, and I was studying there for a while. And I still didn't know what's happening in there, especially in terms of I used to get lots of information about people being killed, people being forcibly disappeared by the military institutions, and ISI, which is like the intelligence branch of the Pakistani military, and different MI, also military intelligence. They used to disappear people, they used to kill them and dump their bodies. And I remember at that time when I was like really young, one of my neighbor was killed by the military, and I think he kind of like also relatives, and I saw his body completely mutilated by the bullets and stuff. And after seeing all of these and listening to people's stories, I was really scared growing up to talk about it, but I was really interested to know more about it and to connect different struggles together. I was like researching more and I wanted to get more involved, but I didn't know how to get involved, especially in a sense where most of our activists or our organizers, even if you talk about the climate, they will go missing, they will get killed by the military. So you literally
Even the climate.
exactly, yeah. Even if you talk about like climate, even if you talk about like CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is causing, displacement, or it's human suffering in our region, and it's impacting our climate. You'll go missing. You will get killed just for speaking about that. Yeah. After that, when I got involved with the Fridays for Future movement, I founded the local group of the Fridays for Future Balochistan, and we were like few friends. We were organizing and we were doing stuff, and mostly about the climate. But then we started talking more about CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Especially, I used to live in a city which is called Gawadar, which is like the hub of the CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So we started talking more about it, and we got in trouble. I got threats for speaking about that, and so they asked me to stop it, or I will go missing.
Who said that to you?
The military institutions. They basically came to me with their cars and they said, "You have to stop, or you will go missing forever." So I said, "It's my basic rights. I'm just talking about the climate," and I tried to be more, the basic things of what's happening, but they didn't let me. So yeah, but we kept doing smaller things like organizing and stuff until I came to COP26 in the UK, and I was part of the Fridays for Future MAPA. Basically, we created a group in 2020 or 2021, which is the most affected people and areas. So it's the time where we are understanding more about the decolonial and intersectionality within the climate movement. So we created MAPA alongside some of the actors from the global south, and we tried to have the people from indigenous communities, people from frontline communities, to connect with each other, but to understand the global perspective of what's happening in our communities around the world more specifically. So it's easier for us to work together. So with the MAPA delegation, I came to COP26 to represent Pakistan and stuff. I think it's kind of like a little explanation of how it started, and like understanding different struggles together. So it's not the climate, because most of the times when I used to talk to people about the climate, so they would, as I mentioned before, they would think that the climate is like it just exists in a vacuum where like carbon emissions, marine ecosystem, marine life, and this and that. But when we go to a deeper conversation about the climate, specifically talking about Pakistan, we see that after colonialism, the only, especially when the British left our territories, the only reason that Pakistan wanted Pakistan because we have resources, because we have resources, so they can benefit from our resources. And when they extract our lands, and when they have agreements with foreign corporations, they do like foreign countries, for example, Canadian Barrick Gold Company, which is doing extraction projects in Pakistan, and Enrico Dick, and the Chinese governments, the US governments taking interest. So they want to extract our lands. And because of that extraction, especially specifically with China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, so many indigenous communities in Balochistan have been displaced because of that. And so many people in Balochistan don't have access to internet. They don't have access to clean drinking water.
Yeah.
Including my own family who are still in Balochistan. They don't have access to education. I have cousins in a village, and they said they have to travel in extreme heat for, I don't know, I think it would be 5-6 kilometers, probably. I think more than that. I don't know the exact location, but they have to travel every day to go to just to go to school in a different village because they don't have education in their own village. So
Yeah.
they have to travel in extreme
And
heat.
how does that make you feel to know that you've got all of these resources, you have all of these big powers coming in? I mean, the US, I mean, Trump is basically saying that I'm going to allow Pakistan to do whatever they want to Balochistan as long as you give us a cut of those minerals. And especially because there's a big competition for the big metals of the world
Yeah.
right now. And how does that make you feel to see that and then at the same time to see so much poverty in your homeland?
Sometimes you feel like you can't do anything about it. There's a feeling that because these are like very big powers and stuff, especially there's like desperation of that, that even if people have been trying for decades and there have been movements and resistant movements in Balochistan, and instead of it, there's lots of changes, but also like people are still trying to benefit, especially the global north and the governments and stuff, they're trying to benefit from our people. So it just makes, I don't know how to explain the feelings of that even you live there, you don't have access to your own resources, but other people have access to that. But I feel like at the same times, there is certain kind of hope. You see those suffering, but there is still hope in when you see your people still fighting to get justice or to get kind of control over their resources and stuff. And most of the times, when the government say, "Oh, we are giving you development," especially the U.S. and China, will develop your country, we'll give you roads, we'll give you school and institutions. They don't. They just say it. But even if they do, our people are still asking just to have control in a sense, access to their different spaces, access to clean drinking water, and to have control over their resources. Basically means just to nor other forces interfere what's happening in Balochistan. We don't need your developments. We think that this development is disguised as colonialism, and we don't want that. And I think this is something that is really important to talk about. That most of the time people say that we'll develop your countries. We don't need your development. We need just our land, our people, and our basic human rights.
And on that note, there's been a very inspiring movement, women-led movement,
Yes.
in Balochistan recently. Some of those women have been imprisoned. They've been founded new organizations. It's a very exciting time. Can you tell us a little bit about the movements for social justice in Balochistan happening right now?
Yes. So in Balochistan, throughout the history, from last 7.5 decades, there has been so many resistant movements, armed resistance, peaceful resistance as well, student organizations, women-led organizations. There used to be a Baloch student organization, and I think in early 2000, and it was also like mostly led by youth and the student and stuff, but it was completely destroyed by the government, and then it was proscribed as a terrorist organization by the Pakistani government, and so many
The student movement was
yes,
prescribed.
the
Okay.
Balochi student organization, and so many members of the Balochi student organization were imprisoned. Some of them are still missing, and some of them were killed. Most of them were killed, and some of them managed to escape from Balochistan, basically. So it was completely destroyed. It does exist a little bit, but underground. It's not like working openly anymore, but there is still Baloch student organization.
And so just to understand this, is it the case that, like, for example, if you were in university, you're part of this Balochi student organization, you did a seminar with your classmates about what's happening in Balochistan, the next day the police would come and disappear you?
Yeah, so it's not police, it's the military and institution mostly. So the Baloch student organization used to do that, like seminars and stuff, and going to different towns and basically awakening people what's happening in Balochistan, and the government was really scared of that. Also, like talking about that Karima Baluch, who used to be mostly the chair woman of the Balochi student organization, I think in 2016 or before that, and she was also killed. She died basically in mysterious circumstances.
Where was she killed?
In Canada. She
That's
died.
an interesting thing,
Yeah,
isn't it? So you're saying that basically also the killing of Balochi activists isn't just confined within the borders of Pakistan.
Yes.
There was also another case in Sweden. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Sajid Hussain. He used to be a writer from Balochistan, and he used to write about what's happening in Balochistan. And I think he was the editor of the Balochistan Times, which is a local newspaper in Balochistan. He was also killed in mysterious circumstances in Sweden, but the police said it's a suicide. But at the same times, there were reports that Karima and Sajid both were receiving death threats from random people. So we still don't know about that. But in the current situation, talking about the resistance and mostly led by indigenous Baloch women, Maharang Baloch, Samidin, both of them are victim of the Pakistani authorities. Maharang fathers were killed by the military institution in 2009, I think, and Sami's father has been missing since 2009, so like 16 years, and Sabiha Baluch as well. Baloch Ekjati Committee basically started after an incident which happened in Balochistan, in Torbat, which is a city in Balochistan, where a young child named Brahms and her mother were attacked by the state-backed, proxies, like we call them death squads. They're basically hired by the government to kill people and to get away from it. So it's like indirect killing of people. So they raided their home basically at the middle of the night to steal things from them, and they killed the mother and injured the child. So after that, there was a movement which used to be called Brahmshak Jehti Committee. Brahmshak Jehti Committee basically means Brahms is the name, is it's still the name of the child. Yakjeti mean unity in Baluchi. Um, Baloch Ekjati Committee, basically it used to become Baloch Solidarity, Baloch Unity Committee. It used to be Brahms and then it changed to Baloch after several incidents, especially after Hayat Baloch. Hayat Baloch was also a student from, he was studying in Karachi, which is like a way back city in Pakistan, and he came to Torbat, which is also, to visit his parents, and he was dragged while he was in a tree. I think it was a palm tree or something. He was dragged in front of his parents, and they used his mother's scarf to drag him at the road. And they, I don't know, like I think they killed him in front of their parents at the road, and it was very tragic. And there was like a movement after that, and then there were like Balach Baluch recently in 2023 in November. Balach Baluch was also killed by the CTD Counter-terrorism department. Basically, they abduct people and they kill them, and then they said like they were killed in operations basically. So they were fighting with the terrorists and they killed them, but they were abducted in front of their families, in front of their friends at the middle of the night or even during daytime. So after that, the Baluch Ekjati Committee became like very large, and they used to have gatherings. The Baluch national gathering, which happened in. Basically after Balach, they led a long march from Turbat to Islamabad, which became a very huge thing, which got like lots of attention from international communities and stuff. And then there was like a sit-in for few weeks in Islamabad, and after that there was like a very huge gathering in Quetta, Balochistan. Quetta is basically the capital of Balochistan. There was a really huge gathering by the Baloch Ekjati Committee. Thousands of people joined that gathering. And then there was another gathering in Gawad, the city where I'm from, basically. But that gathering was disrupted by the government. And I think many people were injured and many people were killed. And even the government tried their best to stop the gathering in Gawad, still continued for days in different parts of Balochistan. Even they literally blocked the internet, they blocked roads, they did everything they can do, but they couldn't stop people from joining the gathering. Even though like the gathering was supposed to be in Gawadar in one place, but because the government didn't allow everyone to come to Gawadar, so many people managed to go there, but people started holding that gathering in different parts of different cities. So it became like a so many series of different gatherings at the same time for many days in Balochistan. The Baloch Ekjati Committee is still doing a great work in terms of raising awareness against exploitation of indigenous lands, against enforced disappearances, more specifically working with the families of forcibly disappeared people by the military institutions. And the leaders, basically the main organizers of the Baloch Ekjati Committee, Dr. Maharang Baloch, have been detained for 6 months, 5 months since March. So 5 months for.
And they're in prison now.
They're still in prison, and they don't have any like legal charges against them. So they try to use different means to keep them in prison basically. So Marang Baloch and Biberg Baloch. Biberg is a disabled person who was, I think, in 2010 or something, 2014 or 2010, I don't know the exact date, but there was a Baloch student organization gathering and it was bombed by the military, and Biberg was paralyzed
Okay.
after that. And now he's part of the Baloch Executive Committee, and he's being imprisoned for 5 months, I think, for now as well.
You said the
So
military bombed the student gathering.
yes,
Okay, speaking of that, yesterday there was an attack. ISIS claimed
yes,
responsibility
yeah.
on a rally in Balochistan. How are people responding to that attack?
Yes, so basically, I think few months ago, ISIS basically threatened the Baloch Executive Committee. They said that they will kill their leaders, basically like they're targeted. So yeah, I think it's really kind of for us. We think that the Pakistani government is behind it. We think the Pakistani government and the ISIS work together. They have very good ties. Basically, there are like lots of evidence, and it's very crystal clear that they do work together in order to suppress people. Because the Pakistani government was receiving lots of international pressure, especially after Dr. Marang Baloch was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, and then. There was like the UN special reporter on human rights also like wrote to the government, Amnesty International, Frontline Defenders, and so many other people, so many organizations and like influential people also tried to put pressure on that. So Pakistan is using different means to suppress our people, and especially they're killing the like the civilians on everyday basis, but also the people like Maharang Baloch and Samidin, they even tried several times to kill Maharang and they were caught. And now they're using different means such as proxies like death squads or the ISIS to
Wow.
suppress people. So I think it's the government, so it's not something new for us. I think I don't think, I'm like 100% sure that they do work together to suppress our people.
Wow.
So yeah.
And I guess maybe for the final question, there's been lots of cooperation lately between the Iranian government and the Pakistani government on operations against Balochistan on both sides. And then added to that, there's been quite controversial news that was released quite recently, which is there's a man, I forget his name, claiming to represent the Baloch people, who is trying to say that the Baloch people support are on the side of Israel in its genocide against Palestine. Can you maybe clarify to our audience where the Baloch struggle actually stands on this question?
Yeah, I'm just an individual on
Right, of course, obviously.
yeah, on individual like perspective. But what I know from people, what I know like growing up, especially as you mentioned that there's literally no internet connection and stuff. But growing up, I always used to hear about Palestine, what's happening in Palestine. So it's not something new for me, and I used to hear people being killed and displaced, even. Like just to hear about it, and I couldn't see it, and right now everything is being live streamed and everyone can see it. But I like, from what I know, I think everyone in Balochistan, that the people that I know supports the struggle of Palestinians, and especially the movements, the Baloch Executive Committee. I think several times. I think like I'm not speaking behalf of them. I'm not part of them.
Of course, of
But
course.
like I have seen their posts about like standing, especially Maharang Baloch posted about Maharang Baloch basically represents lots of people in Balochistan. It's kind of, people look up to her. So she posted about Palestine, supporting the Palestinian struggle, supporting different struggles around the world. And I think the Baloch struggles, if you go through deep into it and try to, understand more, and I think most of the struggle is very, like, people read um, Franz Fanon and like Che Guevara and stuff. So it's kind of very intersectional in terms of that, and it's very rooted in a kind of in like international solidarity. So we believe that if we work together with other oppressed group, and if we try to kind of stand in solidarity, support each other's struggles, we believe that we can try to completely dismantle the system of oppression, the same system of oppression that keep colonizing and oppressing the Palestinians, the Baloch, and so many other people around the world, in Sudan, and in Congo, in Latin American communities, and so many communities and Asian communities. Everywhere where people are oppressed, it's the same colonial system, and we believe that in order to regain the right to our land, to right to our resources, basically the right to everything that we have in our lands, is to dismantle this system. And I think we have a very like we are like this kind of connection with the Palestinian or other struggles. And I don't think, as I mentioned, that I'm an individual and talking on individual basis, and that individual that said that we like asking support from Israel, I think that does the I don't think he represent anyone from Balochistan at all. He's just
And
an
that individual also declared a republic, a free republic. Is it the same individual? Or
I think so.
Yeah, who declared that. And how do people respond to that?
We were really confused, and I think some of the movements actually had to come forward to clarify it, that he does not represent us.
Yeah.
And
Who is he? Does anybody know who he is?
No, nobody knows. I mean, in Balochistan, like for example, everyone knows each other in Balochistan, especially if you're part of the struggle. Everyone knows each other, kind of like, have some kind of connection. And if you're not directly connected, but you know people, and it's not that hard to know people, and nobody knows him. So basically,
This is some guy that Israel made up.
exactly, yeah. It's maybe like someone from Israel, someone from Israel, and they're saying, "Oh, we are doing it." Sometimes they try their best to, I don't know, like to hijack different struggles, and they think that people will be with us. But no, I don't think it's working.
No, it's not. And okay, one last question, because it's such an enjoyable conversation. Of course, also incredibly tragic. But there's a saying, which I forgot the guy's name. I'm forgetting a lot today. I'm sorry, I had a child recently, so fuzzy brain. But there's a saying that says something along the lines of climate activism without class struggle is just gardening. I guess just using that within the context of Balochistan, what does that mean to you, that saying?
I think also there's like also adding into that. I was like, I remember like one of my friends said that thing. Like there's like two things with climate action and climate justice. Not all climate action work is climate justice, and kind of if you're taking climate action, it doesn't mean that you're bringing justice to that community, because there's so many examples like displacing those communities in order to do something, in order to to do climate actions and stuff. And I think I started thinking more about it, like how climate justice is completely different. And also, you mentioned about the court, and I have heard about it several times. In the context of Balochistan, I feel like in order to achieve climate justice in the context of Balochistan, or even in international level, we need to talk about decolonizing indigenous lands. We need to talk about, ending colonialism and imperialism and the capitalistic system that keeps benefiting from the suffering of our people. And we cannot do it. We cannot achieve climate justice. Maybe we try to do lots of climate action work, but it doesn't work out because it's not climate justice work. So in order to do that, in order to achieve climate justice, we need to do that. So it's not just the gardening part. So so it doesn't make sense if you're taking climate action without considering how the communities are being benefiting from it, or suffering from it, or being impacted by it. You are not seeing that part of it. You're just saying, I'm taking climate action, so it doesn't work out. For example, there's an example. Pakistani government said that they're planting, I think, 10 billion trees in Pakistan to mitigate the climate crisis. But it wasn't working out. I think there was like several reports that said that it's actually impacting the ecosystem.
Wow.
Because there's no enough water in many parts, So it's kind of like
counterproductive gardening. That kind of climate
exactly.
action.
So most of the communities were being oppressed and kind of like colonized still till day are indigenous people or frontline communities, and indigenous people protects, I think, more than 80% of the world biodiversity basically. It just doesn't make sense. You're like fueling the climate destruction because you're oppressing those communities, and you cannot achieve climate justice without freeing, without liberating those communities.
That's it for this edition of Decolonial Dispatch. Remember, decolonization is not a metaphor. Stay informed and stay engaged. If this report was valuable to you, share it with your networks and become a supporter of our work. You can go at decolonialcenter.org to join our newsletter. I'm Mohammed, and I'll see you in a fortnight.